So, welcome everyone to Tuesdays at 2. We produce this show every week on Facebook, if the fates allow. And normally I'm joined by my co-hostess, Jessica Johnson. And although you can't see her, she is here. Say hello, Jessica.
Hello, Jessica.
And there she is. So we hope to be back together soon, very soon. As you probably know, we're in Michigan, and in Michigan we have a stricter than most states stay-at-home order right now. We're hoping it'll lighten up in the next couple weeks. So I've been here on camera solo, but Jessica's always in the background helping out as best she can from a distance. And Islander Sewing Systems, what we are best known for is our adaptation of industry sewing for home sewers. In other words, back in the 60s, my Aunt Margaret, whose last name was Islander, developed a system of teaching home sewers some of the great and speedy and more accurate techniques that are used in garment factories, or at least were at that time. And everyone who's ever embraced it and taken a class from us and actually used the techniques never goes back. And most of the techniques are done without using pins. And it's all about knowing how to operate the sewing machine and hold the fabric. It's not just business as usual, just no pins. You do have to have a grasp of how the machine's working, but it's deceptively simple, and your garments come out looking better. So that's what we're most known for. But about a year ago, we purchased Connie Crawford's Fashion Patterns by Connie company. And one of the reasons we felt that was a good idea and a perfect fit for us is that Connie also brings something from the garment industry to the home sewer. And that is pattern drafting and fitting. And so marrying her pattern drafting and fitting with our construction techniques, and they're all just a titch above and sometimes even a full level above what has been presented to home sewers. So it's really exciting to learn these techniques, and once you've learned them, it doesn't take long to master them, and pretty soon your sewing has elevated quite a bit in a very short amount of time, more than maybe you ever thought you could. So it's a pretty exciting here on Tuesdays at 2, and we're glad you joined us. We hope you'll tell your friends and you'll share our videos. We would love to teach the world how to sew faster and easier and come out with better looking projects.
Yeah, Janet, there's a lot of people saying they'll never go back now that they've learned this.
Yeah, well,
learn the system, they're never going to go back.
And that's great that they will give us that testimony. But if for 1 minute you believe me when I say that you can sew without pins and you'll sew better and faster and your end garment will be much nicer looking and hang better, if you can just believe that for a minute, give it a try, and you'll be like so many of the other people here are saying they'll never go back, because why would you? Why would you when you find a better way to do something? It's not about doing it sloppy. It's not about not caring about pieces fitting together properly. It's quite the contrary. We know how to make those pieces fit together perfectly, always stitching on a stitching line and doing it with ease and comfort. That's what makes it so much more fun. So anyway, that's kind of what we're all about here. So if you're new, and we know we have quite a few new people in the last few weeks, so I wanted to make sure everyone was up to speed with what we do and who we are. And if you haven't met Jessica, hopefully in the next couple weeks she'll be back and you'll get to meet my co-hostess. So we are in the middle of what we call our whole couple of months series on fitting, and we call it Sewing the Proper Fit. And I remember taking a class from an old world tailor one time, and the first thing he wanted was everyone to learn how to properly draft and alter a pattern. And after a week or two of having nothing but pencil and ruler and paper, because we were drawing out these patterns, the cry came out from the masses, when are we going to sew? I didn't sign up for this class to sit here and draw for 6 weeks. I want to sew. And the old world tailor, he was so charming, and he just sort of looked up over his glasses at the group, and he said, why in the world would you want to sew before you knew it was going to fit? And it was just so astounding to him. But in the United States, that's the way we were taught. We were not taught to fit. We were taught to buy a pattern and sew it up and hope it fits. So I'm going to try and take you out of that doldrum into knowing it's going to fit before you cut that beautiful fabric. And how are we going to do that? Well, we just finished creating our sloper, our personal sloper for knits. So if you're new, what's a personal sloper? Well, it's a very basic, in that case in the knits, we did a t-shirt. So it's a very basic pattern, no fancy special lines to it or anything, just your basic shell of a pattern. And then we tweak it to fit our specific body. Once we've done that, we create a pattern. From that pattern, you could go ahead and make your t-shirt. The pattern we used was 1207. You could go ahead and make many and many t-shirts. You could take that same pattern and change the neckline several times and have a lot of different t-shirts with different necklines. You could change the sleeve. You could make it sleeveless. There's lots of things you can do with that sloper. But after, if that's not after, but additionally, you can take that sloper and confirm the fit of any commercial pattern and readily know what corrections you need to make to that commercial pattern before, again, you cut it out. And no more of this sew it together, sweating the whole time. Fingers crossed, I hope this isn't a waste of time. I hope this is going to fit. Boy, this is a lot of effort. It sure better look good when I get it done. Put all of that in some basket out in the backyard because you don't have to have those worries anymore once you've created a personal sloper. So far we've created our personal t-shirt sloper. And that should help you fit any knit garment that fits the upper body. Knit garments don't usually have a lot of design lines. So they don't have a lot of, it's not all cut up into a lot of different pieces. Generally, it's front, back, and sleeves. But sometimes there might be some minor design lines that will take place in a knit. But basically, their knits are better in larger pieces. So it's not cut up as much as what we're going to find as we move on to the woven. And so I want to finalize our knit series, workshop, whatever we want to call it, on our knit fit today before I go into getting you ready for the woven. So I put out a newsletter, went out yesterday, and it gives you step-by-step illustrations, photographs of how to use your sloper with a commercial pattern. But I'm just going to go over it here again on film. And Gavin's going to help me with the camera here. And then after that, we'll see if you have, or during, any questions that we can answer before we move on to our preparation for our woven bodice. Okay, so Gavin, you want to come and get the camera ready for me?
Hey, Janet, just so everybody knows, I'm linking the newsletter in the comments. So if they didn't get that, or if they wanted to take a look at it, it's in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so everybody get that. If you want that newsletter and you didn't get it, just go in the comments here. Jessica's posted a link to the newsletter. So again, in that newsletter, what you're going to find is the step-by-step directions and photographs, pretty similar to what we're doing right here. Okay, let me just... Okay, that's good. I think that will be good. We're going to play with this camera angle. Let us know if this, if we need to make any changes, Jeff. So, let me start out with our sloper. So, when we finished our slopers, and those of you who have followed along already have yours done or are in the process, if you're new and you want to do this, all you have to do is go over to the link for videos and go back several weeks, and you'll be able to follow along with this whole process. Because all of our videos we do here on Tuesdays at 2 are archived right here on Facebook. So you will be, if you ever miss an episode, you'll be able to find it. So one thing I want to draw your attention to when it comes to the patterns is, now this is my fresh pattern. I started out, the pattern I had, many of you saw it. It was really messy. It had a lot of writing on it, multiple lines for design lines and things. So this is my fresh, clean pattern. So I drew a fresh one, and after I got all of my alterations switched over to from my muslin, trying on and everything. And note that we've marked the seam allowance on each of these. So you'll see on the neckline, the shoulder, the arm side, and the side seam what seam allowance. You'll notice that I say it's Audrey's T-shirt block sloper. And I've also put the date, April 2020. I put the back on there. You could also write on there, cut 1 on fold. The hemline is also marked at the bottom. So I have all my data, because when I compare this to a commercial pattern, I want to know what that data is, because the commercial pattern generally has a different seam allowance. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Okay, so once we have our front and our back nicely fresh pattern drawn, and all of our markings on it, now we have a commercial pattern, and we want to make sure that in this commercial pattern that it's going to fit us. So we're going to take our sloper and just lay it on top of the commercial pattern. Okay, this is my front, and here's the back. All right, so you'll see that I drew around my sloper with a red marker. That was so that you'd be able to see it. Normally, any old pen will work just fine, but I wanted to make sure in the pictures and here on the video, you'd be able to see what I'm doing. So we know this right here, this fits Audrey, but we want to make this 5 Easy Tees pattern, so we're going to lay this on here. And what I recognized when I did this is the shoulder seam is narrower. And that's because we did narrow the shoulder seam. Audrey is...
Janet?
Yes?
Could we get a view, like, a little bit more above? Like, looking down at it?
So you would like a different angle?
Yeah, because it's hard to see what you're doing.
Okay, Gavin, can you
Yep.
set that up for us? So you're going to have to hold it, I think, is what she's saying.
Like that?
Can you see it? Get the...
It's going to take a second because
You're going to need...
there's a delay on the... Yeah, that could be better, Janet, how you're moving it closer.
Yeah, but he can't... Right now, I got to get him on a stool so he can see what he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, he can't see what he's doing. All right, so is that working?
I think that's better. Yeah. And once he's holding still.
Hardest hold.
Okay, yes, it is hard to hold still. But So what we've done, and here's the key, and I know sometimes there's some variables here, like which line is the correct line. So for example, this t-shirt pattern, this is the front, was cut for a rounded neck. But the pattern we're trying to make is a V-neck. So when we get to this part, we're going to cut the V-neck. We're not going to follow the lines of our sloper. Okay? But when we get to the side seam, now I've traced out the armhole. It's almost exactly the very small armhole on this pattern. So that worked out great. But until we get to the side seam, the very small would have stopped here. But for Audrey, we've got to come out here 3 sizes so that it'll fit her under the arm and in the bust area. And she likes a full at the bottom, so we've come all the way out to large down here. Very small across the chest, upper chest, and shoulders, but much larger in this part of her body, so we've had to come down. All right, and same thing here. We notice that the shoulder is a little bit narrower on our sloper, so that's something to take a look at, but also take into consideration the design lines of the garment you're making and how the change, if you're going to make a change, will impact someplace else on the pattern. For example, if I change this arm side, which I did, I can't use the very small arm sleeve from the commercial pattern, nor can I use, this goes out to small, I can't use the small sleeve either because it's a cross breed. However, I can use the sleeve from the sloper. And if all I want is just a short sleeve, I'll use the sleeve from the sloper because I know it's going to be exactly fit in there. And now I don't have to alter a short sleeve pattern from the commercial pattern. I mean, a short sleeve is a short sleeve. You don't need to do that. So the changes, yeah?
Mary Jackson's wondering, do you align the center front and then the shoulder?
Yes. What you want to, Mary, what you want to know is you, first of all, in any pattern that you're using a sloper, is you want to line the straight of grain. So the straight of grain in this particular pattern is the fold. That is straight of grain. So there's a fold on each of these, so that's perfect. But in some cases, that might not be the case, or it might not be on the fold. So then you want to always align your straight of grain. That does not mean that your straight of grain lines have to be right directly on top of each other, but they do have to be parallel to each other. So that is key. Center front would be key. So if you had a piece that had a center front, you'd be lining up on the center front so that everything got dispersed evenly across the pattern. We will be discussing more of that in the woven, because in woven, you're more likely to have more pattern pieces and you're more likely to not be cutting on the fold, so you'll have center fronts because a lot of wovens are they're gonna be open down the front. So there are other things that we're going to learn from the woven that didn't necessarily apply to the knit this time. So again, always remember to line up. You won't never mess with the grain line. Always keep the grain line. Then it's about finding just and using your logic and all to find the right place to line it up, and always remembering the impact that you're going to make. Like the impact here. I know the impact here has created a much larger armhole. And so I have to think, what am I going to do about that? Am I going to change the sleeve pattern that came with the commercial pattern? Or am I going to use the sloper pattern that I've already know is going to fit? So there you go. What else do we have? Any questions?
Arlene wants to know, do you
Well, like I said, if I wanted to, I could change the sleeve in the commercial pattern. But Arlene, it's not necessary. I already have a sleeve that fits my sloper. And that's the armhole I want, is the sloper. I don't want this armhole because I know it's not big enough. So I need to use an armhole this size. Rather than reinvent the wheel, I'll just get out my sleeve pattern that fits my sloper and use that. Now let's say, Arlene, that the sleeve pattern for the commercial pattern was longer or had some different techniques to it. Well, then we would take the sleeve cap from the sloper sleeve, and then we would take the rest of the sleeve pattern from the commercial pattern. So in other words, it's kind of a Frankenstein thing. But we want to make sure, and it's very, very important to remember, sleeves are drafted. If a pattern's drafted properly, the sleeve is drafted from the arm side. The pattern's drawn with an arm side, or an armhole, if you will. Then, using these measurements and these angles, we draw the sleeve. We draft the sleeve. So you can't just take any sleeve from any pattern and put it in another pattern. It might work. In this case, it won't. But if they were exactly the same size, it would. So keep that in mind. But no, you do not have to change the sleeve here, because I know that the sleeve from the sloper is the best fit.
Okay, so a couple more questions while we're here. Holly is wondering, how much wearing ease are you allowing for in the commercial pattern?
Well, I'm not sure the question, because I'm using the wearing ease for my sloper. I don't care what the wearing ease is from the commercial pattern, because this is the fit I like. That's why I created a sloper. So this is what I'm going to use. Wearing ease in a knit is usually very minimal, 1 to 3 inches. But fit is a personal choice. We all know people that might have the same body measurements. Let's say we have 3 girlfriends, and they all have the same body measurements, but one wears a 10, the other one wears an 8, and the other one wears a 14. Why do they do that? One likes her clothes very loose. One likes her clothes snug, skin tight. That's a personal issue. That's a personal choice. So we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at the fit on someone. I know I've had a lot of people ask for help with their fit, and they send me a picture and they think the garment's too tight. And in my opinion, it's just right. But I'm not the wearer. So my opinion isn't as important as theirs. So when you see somebody posting their t-shirts or their fitted garments, please be kind and don't necessarily add your 2 cents in as to how you would have changed it, because fit is a personal issue, and everyone has a right to have that their choice how their garments fit.
Good point, Janet. And now I have a couple more questions, but I personally have a question before we move on. Do you have a lot more demo on this, or do you think we can put the camera down?
The only demo I have, I'll do real quick, and that is this particular pattern. If you're in a hurry like I am sometimes, then just cut this baby out right on the red lines. Make a few notes. You're good to go. You're in a hurry. If you're not in a hurry, then take your time and trace it out on the red lines, and adding all the pertinent data, which I haven't done here yet, but you can see that now I have the right neckline here. And we've just traced that out. Now this is my commercial pattern, but altered to fit Audrey. So I've written right on it the name of the commercial pattern. and the date. And I should go ahead and put some seam allowances on there and hem allowance. But that's the end of that. So we can put the camera down now.
Yeah, I think even if you are still going to be showing stuff on there, you can put it at that angle that you had it before.
Okay.
And then if you just have to lift up the pattern a little bit, I'll let you know.
All right.
While you're switching that, I'll say Polly is asking, and I know that somebody said it's a little hard to hear me, so I'm going to try to be a little bit louder, and once the camera's down, hopefully that will help. Polly is wondering, she says, you may have said it already, but she missed it. Does the sloper include seam lines?
Seam lines? I have not drawn the seam lines on there, so you could draw them on there and they can be very helpful. If you mean seam allowance, yes. And again, see, this is not a block, this is a personal sloper. So yes, we have our seam allowances and we write them everywhere they are so that we don't have to guess later on and we know they're gonna fit. So if I lift this up, you can see those seam allowances. So yes, seam allowances are included in this personal sloper. You can create slopers without any seam allowance. You could do that. And some designers do that. And that's the best way with no seam allowance if you're going to be manipulating the pattern a lot. So let's say that you're a pattern designer and you're going to take that block and you're going to turn it in from a shirt to a shirtwaist dress, from a shirt, then you're going to turn it into a scoop neck, zip up the back, a top, all types of things from the same block. Then you don't have your seam allowance added because you're going to be doing so much manipulation. After you've manipulated all the pieces, then you add the seam allowance. But in this case, I'm trying to make this process clean and simple for those who don't want to go to all that trouble. There are a lot of home sewers, give me a thumbs up if you're one of them, that just want a decent pattern and want to be able to make clothes that fit, clothes that are pretty, clothes that they enjoy. They don't necessarily want to become a pattern designer or a master seamstress. So that's what this particular process is for, is to help you just enjoy the process, get a good fit, and not have to get a degree in pattern drafting.
Okay. Can we get you back in so we can see you?
Sure. Gaga?
Okay, so, well, are you moving it?
He's moving it.
Okay.
Here I am.
Not to us yet.
What?
Not to us yet.
Oh. I can see me.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions, comments?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have Connie Wood has a,
Hi, Connie.
to be a good question, that I think that you can clarify, and some other people are saying that they were wondering the same thing.
Okay.
So when you're using the commercial pattern, she says, and you're using your sloper to make it so you know it'll fit, she says, won't all your shirts end up looking mostly like the sloper?
No. No. It'll depend on the pattern you choose. Now, a t-shirt's a t-shirt's a t-shirt. Unless you want to turn your t-shirt into a tunic or a crop top or whatever. A t-shirt's a t-shirt's a t-shirt. But when you get done making the slopers for... Okay, let me explain it this way. Everything that we're doing here, the sloper, let's say, the t-shirt sloper, and then we're moving on to the woven sloper, that's how all garments start. That's exactly how all garments start. We draft the patterns that we've given you. Let me see, 1301. Okay, this is how all garments would start that have this princess seam in them. So whether it's a dress, a blouse, a jacket, whatever, they start out with the basic pieces, and then the designer manipulates or, cuts it off, cuts it at different angles, creates different pieces that give it a whole new look. But they always go back to the basic block to start with. Okay, make sense?
I think it's, and correct me, it's important to note you're using the sloper over the commercial pattern to make sure that there is not a significant difference, knowing that it's just going to be way too tight in a certain area, something like that. You're not trying to turn all commercial patterns into your sloper.
That is correct. So in other words, you just want to make sure it's going to fit. And that's all the sloper is supposed to do for you, is make sure that this garment's going to fit. Now, you're not always going to follow. I mean, this is so basic. When you get done, you're going to see this is a basic block. It doesn't have a lot of design lines. There's going to be design lines where side seam goes way out, or the hem goes at a weird angle, or lots of interesting changes in the pattern. You'll be able to take your sloper, and now maybe this top has 7 pieces to it. Well, you're going to be able to know once you sew those together, it's going to fit you. Instead of cutting out all these pieces, sewing them all together, then putting it on and being extremely disappointed and not knowing where you went wrong or how to fix it. So we're gonna strip it all down with this woven one. We're going to start step by step, and when we get done, I think then you'll understand. All patterns start with a block. They either start with a princess seam. There's 2 different types of princess seams. One is from the shoulder, the other's from the arm side, and it's always repeated in the back. Or a basic block that doesn't have a princess seam, but has darting. So this is the darted block. So everything will start from one of these points and then be manipulated and changed. In the darted block, you can move the darts. Darts don't have to stay in a certain place. They can be moved around to change the design line.
Right. And Lori has a comment that has a good example too. She said you're using the sloper, which your sloper has a round neckline, and then you're putting it on the commercial pattern that has a V neckline. The V neck part is the designer part, but putting it over top, you'll know the arms, the waist, the body, all of that is going to fit.
Exactly. Some of the places that you, we'll get into it when we get into the woven one. Unfortunately and fortunately, the knit sloper concept doesn't give us as broad of a range as the woven will. Because with knits, again, you wouldn't do a knit princess seam t-shirt. You just wouldn't. You don't need to, because the knit will just automatically drape across the body, but a woven won't. So that's why we have to have extra seaming or darting to get it to lay across our particular body shape. Nobody else's, but our particular one. That's why we're doing the sloper. And then when you look at it and you can see that, so let's say from the bust point to the waist is 8 inches and you're only 6, you'll know that's where you need to shorten the pattern a little bit. But all of that will be like a little roadmap, because you'll be able to put your sloper on top of it and you'll be able to see exactly. And once or twice doing it, then it's a piece of cake. The first couple times you're going to have some questions or some concerns, but I'll be here for you to answer those questions. And if you're working in muslin to start with, no worries. No worries at all. The muslin's not expensive. We can cut it up. We can add to it. We lost Jessica for a minute, but I think she's back. Are you back, Jess? Hello?
Hello, this is Connie.
Connie, I'm on the air.
You're on the air?
Yeah, we're talking about... Okay, everybody, say hi to Connie Crawford. She just happened to call me. And we are doing, Connie, this is so funny. What we're doing right now is we're talking about the darted sloper and the princess seam and shoulder seam.
Oh, wow. Good.
Yeah, so I've created kits and I'm teaching them. We just finished the knit sloper and now we're moving on to the woven.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'll call you back after the show. How about that?
Do that. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Connie.
Bye.
Bye. Sorry about that. Oh, shoot. Jess? Why didn't I get her that time? Sorry, folks. We're having a little technical difficulty. She's probably rolling her eyes at me right now. You know how she gets.
Hello.
My mistake.
We're not having technical difficulties.
Yeah, I was.
You just answered a call and didn't even say anything to me.
I looked over.
Anyway, okay. So we can discuss this off Tuesdays and Tuesdays.
Yes, we can.
So Deborah is wondering, can you combine, or I'm sorry, are we going to move with the question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Can you combine the top of the sleeve head from the sloper and mash it with the pattern sleeve if you like the sleeve from the a different pattern?
Yeah, that's what I'm calling Frankenstein. So what's really important, who am I talking to here? Holly?
Holly.
Holly. What's really important is that whole sleeve cap stay, so you're going to superimpose the second sleeve below the underarm so that sleeve cap and all the notches and markings stay identical so it'll fit in that arm side. But from under the arm down, you can make those changes by doing a little Frankenstein with the other pattern piece. Absolutely. I used to do that all the time when I was a teenager. One of the reasons I sew is because I never wanted to be wearing the same thing somebody else was. But I wanted to be in style. So I'd look at styles and I'd go, oh, I really like that. I want to make something similar, but I looked through the pattern catalog and they didn't have that bodice with that sleeve. So I'd buy both patterns and I'd Frankenstein the sleeve. But I always knew I had to make sure that sleeve fit in that armhole. If that sleeve is not made for that armhole, all kinds of weird things go on, including the entire sleeve twisting. So you can get it in there, you can sew it up, and it looks really nice on the hanger. And then you put it on, and the sleeves twist. And you have these twist marks in your sleeve. So if you've ever had a sleeve like that, that's why. It either wasn't drafted properly, or it wasn't made to go in that armhole. Okay. What else have we got, Jess?
Sorry, I lost my place here.
Well, I just want to tell anybody that wants to get caught up with the knit fit portion of this series. We have the pattern. It's 1207, so you can look it up. You'll need some knit. We had a knit fit kit. However, we ran out of the knits and our suppliers in Manhattan, and they can't go to work. So we cannot get any more of that lightweight knit, but you can certainly find some from your stash. We have some bamboo and rayon knits that you are more than welcome to purchase to make your t-shirt with, but we still have the pattern. And again, like I said before, you can go back and watch the previous episodes in order so that you can also make a t-shirt sloper. And
can you tell Karen again what that pattern is? Because she's asking what the pattern for the sloper is. What's the number?
1207, CS 1207. So when you go onto our website, you'll go on to patterns, and then there'll be it'll expand, and you want to choose sloper blocks. And when you do that, there's only like a half a dozen or so sloper blocks, so it'll be right there. It'll be easy to find. CS 1207.
Okay, and to clarify your use of the sloper, Joanne is asking, will the knit sloper for a t-shirt work for a knit shirt that is not a t-shirt?
Well, of course it will, because it's going to give you the best fit in a knit for you. And again, you know, that's a personal choice. So if you like your knits to fit very close to the body, very body conscious, that's the way you'll have created your sloper. And when you put it on top of a pattern, maybe that pattern has a picture where the garment looks very body conscious on the person. But then you make it up and it's got 4 inches of ease. And you're really disappointed. But how do you know ahead of time? Well, you know ahead of time because you can lay your sloper right on top of it. And then you can say, wow, that might look like it's body conscious on the cover, but according to my sloper, this would be way too big and sloppy on me. It's just a matter, once you've used the sloper a couple of times, it's all going to be just intuitive. It really is.
Moving on to the next one we're going to be doing, Vicki is wondering, can the princess theme sloper be used as the darted sloper, or would I need to buy the darted sloper also?
I kind of like to have one of each. So my recommendation would to be make one of each, and then you're all set. Because the difference is in the princess theme, it is split into more pieces than the darted. So if you're trying to maybe like a little lightweight jacket and you want to check and it's not princess seams, it's going to be a lot more complicated to try and use the princess seam sloper as opposed to the darted one. So I would like both. And so you know that in our kits, we do have one kit that includes all 3. So the kit number 3 is going to give you 3 yards of muslin, 6 yards of pattern paper, the Connie's Truing and Fitting DVD, which covers all the information that I'll be covering, plus a ton more that I won't be able to cover here on Tuesdays at 2. And it'll include all 3 patterns. So it'll be the CS 1301, which is the shoulder princess seam, CS 1302, which is the arm side princess seam, and CS 1201, which is the darted. And remember, these come in bust cup sizes, which is really going to be helpful because most patterns, particularly commercial patterns like the McCall's line, let's say, and I'm not picking on them, trust me, but theirs are all B cups. So not very many of us are B cups. So if you're a C or a double D or an I or, you know, many of the others, triple Ds, E's, F's, that's really hard for you to get that pattern to fit you. So what you probably end up doing is buying a pattern that's way too big for you everywhere else, but at least it'll get over your bust. This is going to save you because you don't need it to be so big that it's falling off your shoulders and the back is oversized. You just want to get across the bust. And that's why these slopers are really going to make a huge difference in using commercial patterns and going forward, particularly if you don't have a B cup.
Lori has a question that I think people can relate to, maybe not specifically, but she said she has put together a woven bodice sloper, and she found out that she's crooked.
Yeah.
One of her shoulders is lower than the other. Will you be addressing that?
Yeah, we can address that as we go along. So Lori's saying that she found out when she did a woven sloper one time that one of her shoulders is lower than the other. That is in more people than you might think. That is very likely. Also, hips, one hip higher than the other. We do a pant drafting workshop, and more often than not, people are a ½ inch difference from their right hip to the floor than their left hip to the floor. It can happen in the bust line. There are people that are larger on one side than the other. When a person is really seriously asymmetrical and we're drafting for them, we will make 2 different drafts, one for each side, and then merge them together. And if your shoulder's just slightly lower than the other, that can be done very easily. But if there's a lot of difference, people that have had illnesses or accidents or whatever, and their body just grew a little bit different, yeah, we can address that too. And those people need a sloper more than many of the rest of us.
Yeah, and it's like funny because I know it's not the same, but Sandy's comment was right under Lori's, saying your sloper shoulder adjustment worked perfectly. Good. For her knit shirt. She said, I spent years trying to figure out why my clothes didn't fit right, and you figured it out in a second.
Well, yeah, it is funny, but the minute that your shoulder slopes, but your pattern has a straighter shoulder than you do, then obviously there's going to be a big crease of fabric right here, because where's it going to go? It was supposed to be up here. And so when you let it down, it's going to fall in here and make these unsightly wrinkles just before your arm side. So just by changing the slope of that shoulder, that extra fabric's not there anymore. Woo! Now it looks just like everybody else. It hangs nice. And I think it happens somewheres, and I'm not a historian on this, but fit got lost somewheres in the 50s and the 40s, when more and more people were buying ready-to-wear and less people were sewing. We got used to accepting what was available for us. And there's no store that says, we specialize in one shoulder being lower than the other. There's no store that says we specialize in rounded backs. It just doesn't happen. They make everything as if we were all hourglass and straight figures without any irregularities. And that's what's on the rack in the store. I apologize for the phone ringing.
Did you need to answer that?
Okay, I'm going to say it. In my defense, I thought the phone had gotten disconnected and you were calling back.
It's fine. It's fine. We're happy to hear her.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, so it used to be people had their clothes altered or custom made, and everything looked so nice. And when you look at people in the movies, their clothes all fit really nice, especially if you go back to the 40s and the 50s. But now not so much, because we're all used to the ready-to-wear fit, and no one's pointing out somebody in the grocery store going, can you believe how bad her dress fits? The back hem hangs up so much higher than the front. No, because we're just used to seeing it. But it does look prettier when it hangs parallel to the floor and everything hangs nice from your shoulders down. And you can certainly achieve that kind of a fit without a lot of work by using a sloper. Are we done with knit sloper questions so I could move on with a little prep for next week?
Sure, I think so.
Anybody got a last question about knits? Okay, we're running a lot longer than I expected. So what I want to talk about is we're going to work with the woven next week. So if you don't have your pattern, you can purchase it now, or you can purchase a kit. Take a look. It's up to you. We're happy any way you do it. But if you want to work along with us, you want to get your sloper right, and you want to ask me questions, you need to use our sloper pattern. I won't be able you know, a lot of times people will write me and they go, I know this isn't your pattern, but can you help me figure out what's wrong with it? No, I can't. I didn't draft it. I don't have the paper pattern. I can't see what's wrong with it. So please, if you want to follow along, get one of the patterns. 1301 is the one that I'm going to work with, but 1302 will work just fine. And eventually, I would recommend the darted one as well. But if you do one of these, you'll be able to do the other one on your own. You won't need me. So once I get you through one of these and you'll have the video, you'll be fine. So if you are not going to purchase a kit, the supplies you need to collect is one of these sloper patterns, preferably 1301 or 1302. You'll need enough muslin to cut that out and some spare, so a couple of yards at least. I recommend having a Sharpie because I draw all over my slopers. Lots of different reasons. One of them is we're going to draw the center front or the straighted grain lines. We're going to draw the center back. And we're also going to want a horizontal line so we can make sure that our pattern, again, is hanging straight down from the shoulders, because that is the beauty of a custom-made garment, is that it hangs properly from your body. And so that's why we need the Sharpie. You'll need a ballpoint ink pen as well, because, again, we might write notes on our sloper, but we also want to use a ballpoint pen when you're tracing out your patterns. It's a ballpoint black, medium point. It's dark. You can see it well, and the pen rolls smoothly so that you can get a nice clean lines in your pattern. You know, some Scotch tape is always, especially the transparent tape or repositional tape, because you may be adding to your pattern pieces or dicing them up and taping them back together. So have some tape handy as well. So for next week, well, before I go into that, I want to talk about how to use this series. And you know, we've just kind of been doing a lot of sew-alongs, but this is our first series on fitting. And what I want to suggest, having done these sew-alongs as well, is that you watch the instructional video and absorb the information, maybe take notes, then re-watch, is particularly the detailed parts of the video, then execute it. Many people are watching once, then trying to do it, and they're hitting pitfalls, and they're writing me, how do I do this? And it's all in the video. I don't mind answering the question, but I think that you'll learn better if you repeat the video. At least maybe not the chatter part, where we're making jokes and stuff, but the basic meat of the information. Watch it at least twice, because if it's new to you, it's not going to stick real fast. You need to repeat it. And so to me, you watch the entire video, and then sometime during the week, you execute what we showed you. Don't try to get ahead of us. Don't try to start before us. Nothing's happening. We're not going anywhere. There's no hurry. I think some people have gotten so excited they get in a big hurry. And I love that. I love the enthusiasm. But take your time. Take your time. Relax. We're going to get through this together. Once you have your pattern or your kit, take the pattern and choose the fullest part of your bust. So we're going to measure right across the apex. That's the nipple of the bust. Make sure that the tape measure stays level all the way around so that it's not dragging up or down in the back. Take that measurement, and that's the size pattern you're going to cut from the sloper pattern, okay? So many times I get these questions. Well, what if I'm this and what if I'm... No. Just go with the bust size and cut it out, because we can add and subtract from the sloper. Not to worry. You can, if it's too short, we can add to it. If it's too long, we can subtract from it. Don't worry about a thing. Just the fullest part of your bust. Now, I want you to know we talked about fitting. And like I said, I had one woman who wrote me, she showed me her knit t-shirt. She said, this is way too tight. It looked perfect to me, but it was too tight to her. She was not going to go out of the house in it. She wasn't going to feel comfortable. When we get to the princess seam, we want this to fit. We want this to fit with very little ease. You can add ease later. But when you do a princess seam, the reason you do a princess seam is so that it fits your shape, so that it goes over the bust, back in at the waist, back out at the hip, because that's the female shape, or what we aspire to be. And so we want to show that shape even when it's still a little misshapen. We're still women. We still have a bust, we still have a hip, and so we're going to do our best to show those lines as nicely as possible on the body that we're working with.
And Janet, you want them to take that measurement with their bra on, correct?
That is correct. You must take it with your bra on, because it won't be the same shape, won't be the same number without the bra. It definitely won't. And you want to keep in mind a lot of things that we'll be discussing next week. So I'm just going to leave the rest of the bust line for next week. So if you get ready by getting your supplies together one way or the other and cutting out the size you need, then what you will be doing next, you can either do this before next week or you can wait, but baste all the seams together. So
hey, Janet, if they order today, will they get this in time?
We're shipping tomorrow. Now, the question is, will they get it in time for next week? I would hope so. It depends on where you are. And we
yeah,
all...
Lori, she looked, U.S. looks U.S. She looks U.S. It looks as though she's in the U.S.
But even in the U.S., we sent a package the other day across town. It took 8 days to get there.
Okay.
The problem is so many people are mail ordering, well, what we used to call mail order, internet ordering, whatever, that the post office is way behind. They're 5 or 6 days behind sometimes. So I want you to know that. But even if you have to start, I'll ship it tomorrow. And most likely you'll get it by Monday. But if you don't worry, because the video's not going anywhere. Remember, the video is going to be archived right here on the Facebook page. You're never going to lose it. Something happens and changes your life and you can't get back to it till next month, it'll be there.
And then Kay has a question I know the answer to, but she did not do a knit sloper yet. She says, do I have to do that first?
No. The question is, do I have to do a knit sloper before I do a woven sloper? Nope. They just don't pertain to the same thing. And here's one of the reasons why. A knit generally has very little ease, because a knit is loose and it gives. And so it just drapes across the body. But with a woven, you don't have that kind of ease. So it all has to, it's an entirely different fit. It's a little bit more detailed fit in a woven than in a knit. So that's why I started with the knit, because it's a simpler concept, and because we all wear t-shirts of some kind. We all have t-shirts. So we felt like that's the best place to start. And whenever you're putting an education program together, you want to think that way. You want to think about, well, get people to understand the basic concept in the easiest way, and then take them into the more complicated as we move along, which is exactly how we're handling this. So if you've watched the knit sloper and you've seen kind of what we're doing, then you've got an idea. If you want to do the knit sloper, go ahead. And if you want to ask questions of me, you can always email me And what I've told people that are having any kind of struggles, either with the knit or the woven, you'll send me pictures, email, not on Facebook, send them to me in the email. And then I will send back answers to any of the questions that you might have about fit. Just remember, when you send me pictures, I want to see the whole thing on your body. So if you don't want to show your face, cut yourself off at about the chin. You don't want to show your feet, cut yourself off at about the knee. But I got to see the whole thing, and make sure the lighting is very good. Outdoor lighting is sometimes the best. Go outside and have somebody take pictures. I want to see the front, the side, and the back view. Several people have sent me pictures where they're doing this with the camera. Well, I can't see how that garment fits when your arms are up like this and the thing is not hanging right. I can't see if the side seam's hanging straight. I can't see the back. So there's a lot missing when you're doing this or doing this with your camera. It's better if you can get somebody else to take a picture. If not, and you have to take all your own pictures, then get as many different angles as you can to help me out, because I want to give you the right answer. I think that's all they have.
Okay. Oh, I know you just said all the thing about the email. Say your email address.
islandersewing@comcast.net.
Awesome. I know I did miss a couple of comments in there. They were coming in kind of fast at a point. So I know there's a couple people having a problem with their, one or two people having a problem with their neckline. So they can go ahead and email you.
Yes, please. If you're having trouble with your neckline or anything else in the knit sloper, and we have not addressed your question today, yeah, we've had a lot of questions, so, and a lot to cover. I didn't even cover as much as I wanted to, but I almost never do. Save last week. Last week was a mess, but everybody gets one of those. So yeah. So anything that, if you just started the knit sloper, next week you have a question. Again, all I want is good, clear photographs from several angles. I'm not judging you. I literally can't judge you, because when I'm looking at fit, I'm not judging anything about the body. We're not seeing anything different than just how does this fabric going to hang on this particular angle and fit the body and hang straight and look nice. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not sharing the pictures with anybody, but I do need to really get a clear understanding of how that garment is fitting so that I can give you the right advice.
Okay. That's what I have.
Okay. All right. I don't think I had anything else. I will just say, because someone will ask eventually, but these shirts in the background here are all the everybody's shirt.
Except for the Motor City that somebody asked about.
Yes, and then the jacket is the Motor City Express, which is one of my blueprint craftsy classes as well as a pattern. But that's a princess seam. That jacket is a princess seam. These shirts are darted. So it kind of gives you an idea of, you know, the reason that those are princess seams or darted is to get that nice close fit to the body to show off the feminine physique. And you know what's really funny too? I want to say this because I was surprised myself. I'm an apple shape, so I'm short as well as very round. And not a lot of space between my bust and my waist. And I always thought, oh, I could never wear that kind of shape. Actually, that shape helps almost any figure. I don't care how apple shaped you are. It gives you just a little more definition and a little more shaping. It's always a good look. All right, I think that's all for this week. I mean, I have tons more, but we can't go on and on. We'll come back next week. We're going to start with that woven sloper on a dress form and start talking about different fitting issues, and we'll go from there. So I guess that's all from Islander Sewing Systems. And again, this has been Tuesdays at 2. That's 2 o'clock Eastern Time. But again, if you can't see us live, and we'd love to have you live so you can join in and be part of the community and ask your questions live. But if you can't watch us live, just remember, there's a link right here on Facebook that says videos. You go to that page and there's over 100 of our videos. And most recently, the last 6 months, we've been doing sew-alongs. So we have one of our patterns. We've created kits for these sew-alongs. You can follow along step by step and actually physically see each operation, as well as having the pattern guide beside you. So a lot of times when you're sewing, you just wish you could ask whoever wrote these directions, what do you mean by that? You can tell I've had that experience. Well, here you go. We've got the directions and we have the video for several of our patterns now, and we plan to do more. So enjoy those as well. And come back next week at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, and I will be here, and Jessica Johnson will be joining me. So you want to say anything, Jessica?
I think you covered it.
It's so bizarre being co-hosts and not being sitting next to each other. It's a little disjointed. I hope it's going to be over with soon. I hope we all can get back to life as we have enjoyed it in the past. I really miss my family and friends, but I'm glad I have Tuesdays at 2. So thanks again for coming. Enjoy your week. Have a lot of fun sewing. Bye-bye.